like, have you tried apazote already? And she's like, no, not really. And then she's like, you know what? So weird, but I actually have some in my garden. I'll give you some, maybe try that. And she gives her apazote. And like a few weeks later, the woman comes back and she's so happy. And she's like, my problems are gone. She's like, oh, you're amazing. And then a few more women come because this or first girl told all of her friends about it, and they're like, oh, can you tell me, like, what should I do for my menstrual pain and for this and that and la la la, and she was like, what's happening, and she says every time these words would be whispered in her ear every time, and it was just names of herbs, and so she was like, well, I guess maybe try this herb and that herb. I don't know, and so then she was like, okay, well, I should really start to study this formally, because obviously, like, the grandmas in my dreams were right, like this is happening. So then she went to formal training to be a midwife, and that's her story. And so many healers that I know of the Maya tradition have the same story, like Tata Alberto. He kept having all of these dreams where people came to him and told him, you have to be an Aki, you have to follow your path. And he was like, I don't know anything about that. And he was like a little spooked by the whole thing. And eventually it was his path, really. And, for Raquel's mom, Bonifacia, her own mom was a herbalist, but Bonifacia didn't follow into those footsteps because the civil war, like the genocide of the Maya people, happened. So there was like this big disconnect. And then Bonifacia, and her husband had to flee the country. I think that's how you say it, because of the genocide. And they went to Honduras. But right before they went to Honduras, a bunch of herbalists kept offering Bonifacia to train her to be a herbalist. And she was like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm not interested. And then in Honduras, the same thing happened. A bunch of herbalists were offering to train her to be a herbalist. And she was like, this is so weird. Why do people keep offering to train me to be a herbalist wherever it is I go? And eventually, it was both her and her husband. People were like, we can train you guys if you want to be herbalists. And then the husband was like, finally, okay, you know what? I'll learn, whatever, let's see what this is all about. And after a few months of him learning, she was like, okay, well, you know what? This seems interesting. I'll learn too. Um, and then she realized she has all the information already in her own house. It's kind of like the alchemist, where he goes on this big journey, but the treasure is, sorry for the spoiler alert, but the treasure is where he originally started, where he had the dream, and Bonifacia had her own mom, who was a herbalist, at her own house, and so she had to go through all this journey of people like and rejecting it for her to just come back to her house and use her own mom's medicinal plant garden to do her practices. And now they are the most famous healers in their community because they are so great. I can tell you that because they've treated me. So I know for a fact that they can heal people with herbs. And so, of course, you can take the formal training and everything, but some people have it as a gift, and Kech are part of that group of people who have medicine or herbalism or those things as a gift, where it's a little more magical than just reading books and taking courses. They have like some intuition about it. They have some experiences. They might have like dreams, or they might have like, all kinds of experiences like this. And in the Maya tradition, by the way, this is a big part of it, the intuition, the magic, the being open to listening to dreams. Like that happened to my mom once, for example. Apparently, I used to sweat a lot as a kid, as a baby, but like uncontrollably. I don't know why. I don't know what was wrong with me. And then one night she went to sleep and she had this dream, and this grandma, this really creepy, she says, because she was so old, this really creepy grandma comes to her and she's like, bathe her in, does anybody who speaks Spanish know how to say cebada? Cebada, that grain, cebada water. I don't know. Okay, if any of the Spanish speakers know, put it in the chat, but otherwise, I'm sorry, I just don't know. Barley? Okay, barley. So the viejita, the old lady in my mom's dream, was like, bathe her in barley water. And then my mom woke up, and my mom is very open to those things. So she's like, I'll try. Like, I don't lose anything by trying. I'll just wash her in barley water. And she did it. She says she had to bathe me in barley water one single time, and that was it. I never had those sweats again that were driving her crazy. Like she says my bed would become wet from how much I was sweating. And and she says, I don't know why it works. I have no idea about medicine or the properties of barley or why it worked, but it worked. And this grandma just came to tell me. And my mom, I hope she's fine. I always tell her, Mom, you don't know, but I always tell all your secrets during the challenge. She's like, Sulbai, what are you telling people about me? But anyways, so basically, she also had, like, for a while, my mom had all kinds of dreams. And in one of them, she says that there were these like beings who took her out of the earth and she could not see them. She was like on top of the earth. She says she could not see them, but she could like communicate like telepathically with them, and they were telling her like things about healing and all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden she was cleaning one day, a few days after this dream, she was cleaning my dad's like library, and my dad loved reading, so he had like a lot of books, so she was just like dusting them off, like taking them out, whatever. And all of a sudden this book just falls out of his library, of his bookshelf, I mean, and it's this super tiny pocket book. And she grabs it and it says, The Secrets of the Curanderas of Mexico. And she's like, oh, cute. I wonder what this is. And so she just opens it in a random page. And in the random page in the middle of the book that she opens it, it says, it's an interview where they have like the question and the answer. They were interviewing a curandera, a healer in Mexico. And they ask her, how do you heal people? Like, how do you know what to give them, what medicine to give them? And she says, oh, I just go to sleep. And there's these beings who take me out of my body and into the face of the earth. And I cannot see them. I cannot hear them, but I can communicate telepathically. And they just tell me what medicine to give people. And then I wake up and I know what medicine to give people. And then they all heal. So my mom was like, oh my goodness, that just happened to me. She was like, that's so crazy. She's like, that one book fell and she opened it right in that specific page. It was so weird. But anyways, so for the Mayans, there really is like a whole thing about, intuition, magic, being open to receiving messages, being able to develop like these skills, that are connected to the healers, that are like about being open, receiving those kind of like, messages from I don't even know where. But it's amazing because every single time, and I've met so many healers who've had this experience, and they always say that every time they use like just their book knowledge is like good and everything. But when it happens like that, the patient always heals, like when they have it in a dream or when they hear the message or something, it's always like they heal completely. And Panchita, for example, she's one of the ones who I always talk to because that's how she always does it. She was telling me she has like 50 students or more because she heals cancer, and she says she doesn't want to keep that information secret or something. She really wants to pass it on. So she's like, I don't mind. I just want to share it with everybody all the time. I want everybody to know how to do it. But the problem is that not many of her students can do it because she has like the specific herbs that she works with and stuff like that. But for her, it's every single time she has a patient, it's in her dreams that she says at first it was really spooky and scary. And she says sometimes she already starts to have fights and stuff with the elders that come to her in her dreams. She's like, no, we shouldn't do it like that. We should do it like this. And they're like, no, do it like this. And so she says for her, unfortunately, that's not that part she can't teach. It just happens to you. You know what I mean? Like you can't teach another person how to have that. It's just like part of her gift or something that she has that. So that's the beautiful gift that Kieh has, that Kieh has this beautiful gift, which is just to be able to have an extra layer of knowledge about herbs. The herbs really speak to them. The intuition speaks to them. They have that healing magic in them. For that reason, they could be great healers, specifically healers who work with plants, healers who work with herbs. They, again, still have to learn. Don't just start experimenting with patients randomly. That's unethical in any tradition. But, after you've learned, you might have these skills as well. So And for anybody who's not yet today, if you are a herbalist, if you are a healer, if you love working with plants, today is a really great day to honor that, to honor your practice, to do little rituals or practices to honor your herbs, to do special work in regards to herbs. Today would be a great day to do that. And on that note, I'm so impressed by hers because now I got obsessed because of Raquel. I'm obsessed. You guys don't know. Like, you don't know. I always understood that this is great, it's powerful, it works, etc. But I never paid too much attention to it until Raquel gave me treatment and it healed me. And then I was like, how is it possible that some small leaves, in a tea that, I take 3 times a day for 3 days completely took away a problem that I had my entire life. And that for decades, doctors with chemical medicine and all kinds of things and therapies and years and decades of like trying to work on those problems, like couldn't take it away. And Raquel gave me some, like, she was like, here's a, like, she was like, here's a little like bundle of leaves. She's like, take this many, put them in your tea, do that 3 times a day for a week, then stop for a week, then start again in a week. But I didn't even have to do it like that. 4 days in, I already was like feeling how the problem went away. And I was so shocked. I was like, wait, I mean, I knew it was powerful, but like, oh my goodness, just some grass can do that. I was like, what is this? What kind of witchcraft, And so basically, I'm really obsessed with it because since then I've taken everybody in my family, all of my friends to Raquel. I'm like, you want to heal? Come to Raquel. I want to just like learn more about it. And I've seen it work for every person that I've brought to her, like with anxiety, with health problems, with all kinds of issues. And so herbs really do work. So I invite you today to dive deeper into that work and into also what she says, which is preventative medicine with herbs, which is another practice that I think is so amazing. So, which she gave me a tip, by the way, and the tip is you just mix your daily water every day. Instead of just drinking water like this, like just normal water, instead of doing that, you just mix your water with medicinal herbs, but every day a different one. So in the morning you prepare, like you boil it and you make like any herb that has medicinal properties. Like today you do it with mint. Tomorrow you do it with I don't know. Tomorrow you do it with wormwood. Then the day after you do it with I can't think of herbs right now, but you know what I mean? Like you do it with like this specific leaf that is good for whatever. Orange tree leaves. Then the other day you do it with whatever. And she says you just rotate, and every single day you take like a different medicinal herb every day. There's hundreds of them. So you can get creative. Some days you do it with purple basil, other days you do it with oregano, other days you do it with this or with that, and then she says that is gonna maintain your health. Of course, big disclaimer, right? I just said wormwood. I just said some things as examples that you have to remember that some of the plants need a lot of knowledge when it comes to dosing them, because if you take too much, they also can be bad or dangerous. So do your research, talk to an actual herbalist before you take herbs irresponsibly, because they can also have a negative effect. Some herbs are really strong, but as soon as you have the knowledge, or 100% that you have the right dose and that it's all good and whatnot, I think that's a really great tip. And another important tip that she gave me is wherever you buy herbs, he was like, don't waste your time. Like, do not even do that if you're not gonna buy herbs that have been harvested correctly. And for her, that means they have to be obviously organic. Obviously, like that kind of goes without saying. For her, it also means they're watered with spring water. And for her, that also means they have to be harvested between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., not after, or after 4 p.m. Reason? There's a lot of reasons behind this, but basically herbs lose up to 50% of their essential oils with the strong sunlight. And a lot of the health properties of herbs are in those essential oils. So they lose more than half of the benefits. And then there's this other thing that she cannot explain properly in words about how at that hour in the morning, the properties are all over the plant, but when the sun is high, the properties go to the root or something like that. I don't understand what that's about, but she says it's kind of useless if you don't know how to harvest them properly, because you might be having plants that are kind of dead. She says she's also seen how sometimes people sell dehydrated herbs, but they're not properly dehydrated. They're basically dry. And at that point, they also had their properties die. So make sure people know how to properly dehydrate your herbs so that they don't lose their property. Because high heat, obviously, right? And a lot of herbal places that sell you herbs like use super high heat, you know what I mean, for drying them or dehydrating them, and then they lose a lot of their properties. So do your research basically and make sure you source them from a good place. But if you do, then do it in your own garden, even better. Like plant the herbs yourself and then follow all of those principles if you have a garden or a space for herbs in your house. Um, but anyways, I'm getting too excited talking about Rangel, so let me get deeper into Kej. So that's one of the things that Kej teaches us. Medicine, plants, trees, herbs, the wisdom of the earth, the medicine of the earth, the connection of the earth, how we can be absolutely healthy just because of the earth, you know? And so that's like one thing that we can honor today, is one thing that we can remember today, think about, work with, and even start learning about if you've never heard about it before. I think herbalism is for everyone, really. So that's one thing, right? The other thing that Kek teaches us is about the example of the deer. Deer always have represented the ability to take a look at the things inside of ourselves that we think that are our weaknesses, and realize finally that they are actually our strengths, you know? And I think this is so profound, and it's so true, you know? Um, you know, deer have thin legs, right? I don't know if you've noticed that. It's like very thin. It feels like if you kick it, it'll just break, you know, because they're of how thin they're. So in that way, deer are not like horses. They're not like monkeys who can carry a lot of weight in their back. Deer are not meant to do that. They're meant to run and jump around the forest and just enjoy themselves. They're not meant to carry stuff. But if a deer would compare itself to a horse, if a deer was more like human beings, because I'm sure deer are not really doing that, but if they were more similar to humans, it'd be like, look at the horse, has such big legs, and I have such thin legs. That's my weakness. That would be so dumb of the deer, because really the idea is that deer are anatomically perfect. They are supposed to be the exact way they are for how they're supposed to live their lives in nature, and they're not supposed to carry a lot of weight. So if a deer thinks, oh, I'm not strong enough to carry weight, that means I'm weak. No, that's not true. It's perfect the way it is. It means its strength is not in carrying weight like a horse can. Its strength is in something, it's in something different. And I know not everybody likes him. I really love him, Tony Robbins. But basically, I heard him say that once. I love him because he saved my life, honestly. But anyways, a long time ago, long story. I'm not even gonna get into it. But anyways, I was listening to him once, and he said something, and I found it so funny because I identified with it so much. He said, "For the longest time, I thought that what now everybody in the world would agree is my biggest strength, for the longest time I thought was my biggest weakness, because all my life, all my childhood, people told me, Tony, you talk too much. You're always talking. Give it a break. You don't have to talk that much." And he said, now I literally talk for a living. And because I talk, I've changed the lives of millions of people. Like talking was my strength all along, but I was ashamed. I was self-conscious. I thought talking is my weakness. Same thing. I love learning and I love sharing, as you obviously can probably see, since I'll be talking for 20 hours straight during the challenge. But basically, I had the same thing. I talk too, and everybody's always like, that's your weakness. Don't talk too much. You talk too much, you know? But then I heard that and I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. Like, I'll reframe that. How about I make it my strength instead of my weakness? And I don't think it's a bad thing about me. but it's a positive thing about me, right? And so, I've seen people say like, oh, I'm too emotional, I'm too sensitive, and they talk about that like that's my weakness. But really, sensitivity, emotional sensitivity, if you use it for the right things, it can be an absolute strength. It can help you read people better. It could make you a way better like advisor, or way better at art, or way better at so many different things, right? Than if you can't be like truly a good artist or good at certain things if you're not emotionally sensitive, and so you can look at it as like, oh, that's my bad thing because I'm too sensitive, or oh, I'm sensitive, that's like my biggest strength. And so in that, and I can't remember who I heard say this, but even things that we think are so bad, and that's what I was mentioning the other day, such as anxiety or depression, that of course that's not a personality trait or something, is not part of us, is a struggle that people go through. But I heard somebody say oftentimes we put our anxiety as this big monster in front of us, and he said, how about we would switch to the place of it and we would put it behind us, so that gives us the opportunity to run away from the monster into the thing that we want, right? Instead of it being the thing that stops us and that blocks us and that makes us freeze, how about we utilize it as the thing I have, if I want to stop walking my path, if I want to stop running, I just have to look back and see this big monster, and I'll remember why I have to keep running. You know what I mean? And get there, So is what I was saying the other day. Like, we think that sometimes those bad things like anxiety, depression, feeling bad, all those negative things that we experience are the problem, but they really are not the problem. They are just the symptom of the actual problem. And having symptoms is amazing, because what would happen if you would be sick and you wouldn't have symptoms, and you would never know that you have to heal? And then once, by the time you discover you have this big problem, that probably would be really bad. You know what I mean? So symptoms are great because they are the pain that lets you know, hey, listen, pay attention. You have to work on this problem, because otherwise it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. By the time it already got to depression or anxiety, it means it's really bad. But that's also really good, because by the time it gets really bad, you also want the symptoms to be stronger, because you really want to be pushed towards healing that. And so all of these things that in modern Western society we love to push down, to see as weaknesses, to see as bad things, really in the Maya tradition are considered our strengths. And that's what the deer teaches us. The deer teaches us to see how the things we think are bad really are good, how the things we think are weaknesses really are strengths, how the things we think are problems really are lessons that will be able to help us heal and become even better versions of ourselves. And so in that sense, Kiek has what I think is one of the most beautiful teachings. But you remember how I said deer should not be carrying stuff? Their legs are too thin for that. Kiek people, you're a deer. What does that mean? You should not be carrying stuff. And I don't mean literally physically carrying stuff. Of course, that's not what I'm referring to. I mean emotionally, metaphorically speaking, the stuff that you carry. What's the problem? Your weaknesses are your strengths. Yes, people love carrying stuff. No, yes, stuff. But more than anything, yes, people love carrying other people. I don't know what's up with cash. They just love carrying everybody in their life, putting everybody in their life in their back. They get so emotionally involved in the problems of others. They have such a good heart, which is their strength, but in this sense it can also be a weakness, because they're so good, they just want to help, they love their family so much. They, in Spanish, there's such a beautiful word, and it's such a pity that it doesn't exist in English, is desvivirse. It's like it literally means, if you would literally translate it, it would mean to unlive yourself. So in Spanish you can say you can unlive yourself for your family, or unlive yourself for others. So it just means like you do so much for others that to the point it's you cross the line between being helpful and just being good at community and stuff, and it being a negative thing for you. So Quech people, they worry a lot about their family. They worry a lot about the people they love. They want to help others. It's so funny. I mean, I said this to a friend of mine the other day who's Kiech, who by the way wants to help me in the social work that I'm doing because obviously he's Kiech. He just wants to help in everything he can help in. Um, but when I told him that you just do everything for others before you do anything for yourself, because he was asking me, oh, can you explain me what's my Mayan energy? And I was like, oh, you're Kiech. That means this and this and that. And he all of a sudden he was like, he went from smiling and he just had so much sadness in his eyes when I said that. And I was like, oh no, because he's like, yeah, that is true. He was like, I do everything for others before I do anything for myself to the point. And he was like, but I can't not do it, Sulvai. I can't not do it. And I was like, okay, well, you have to learn how to not do it because it's not helping you so much. And he was like, no, I have to be helpful. I have to help others. I love them. I want to see that they're okay. And I was like, okay, yes, you're so very Kiech because obviously that's how deeply you feel about it. But I I started telling a story a few challenges ago during the challenge during Kiech, of I did a Mayan chart reading for a lady once and she was a mom and she was like, can you do it for my kids too? So I said yes. And she was like, "Can my kids come and listen as you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." They were like 10 years old or something. I was like, "Yeah, well, why not?" So I was explaining it to the kid, which was weird. I never did a my intro reading for a kid to a kid, you know? And so I was trying to come up with like good examples, you know? And I was like, how the kid was scared. I was like, how am I gonna explain to this kid in a way that doesn't sound weird? Don't help other people. Like, how do you say that to a kid without it sounding terrible? They're saying that to a kid. So was thinking about like, the example of the house that I told you guys the other day. Imagine you're like a house, right? And you do the decency to your house to clean it every day. But imagine you stop cleaning it for a week, for a month, for a year, for a decade, and then your house gets really stinky, it gets really dirty, it gets full of animals, spider webs, insects, mold, all kinds of terrible things, right? And I was telling him, imagine how horrible it would be to live in such a dirty house, right? And he was like, yeah, right, that would be bad. And I was like, yeah, that would be bad. And I was telling him, so now you live in that dirty house. That's your house. That's you, right? And so what do you have to do? You have to clean your house, right? And sometimes it's hard because it's overwhelming to see the big dirt all around the house and think, oh my goodness, where do I even start? So basically, where do I even start cleaning the house? It's overwhelming. And I told him everything I told you guys. Like, you can do it in a day. You can't possibly split yourself into 10 people and do the windows, the floors, the dishes, the toilet, the trash, all at the same time. You have to do it one by one, and it's going to take time. And if it's super dirty, it's going to take days. You're going to still have to be a functioning adult, right? So you still have to go to work, you still have to go to sleep, you still have to socialize. So you have to find the balance, right? You can't spend 24 hours straight just cleaning. So it might take days, but after 3, 4, 5 days, you're going to start to feel better. Your house is going to be cleaner. And if you figure out how to do the maintenance so it doesn't get dirty again, amazing, then you figured it out. But I told him, okay, but what if before you clean your house, you have your best friend and he's living in another house and his house is equally dirty as yours as well. And you feel bad about it because you see how uncomfortable he's living, how stinky his house is, you see how terrible his house is. So you feel bad. So you're like, I have to help him clean his house. But I was like, but your house is still dirty. I was like, you can't go and clean somebody else's house if your house is still dirty. And I told him, but imagine another example. Imagine your house is actually clean, but you still have this friend who has a super dirty house and you're like, wait, my house is clean, I know how to clean, I'm good at cleaning. So you go to your friend's house and you tell your friend, hey, I can help you clean your house because I'm really good at cleaning house. I can give you all these cleaning tips. We can create a strategy together for how we're going to tackle it, where we're going to start, what we're going to do. And your friend says, oh, that's amazing because I'm in such a dirty house, but I really want to clean it. Thank you for your help. But you know what? Before we start cleaning, sit down, please. I want to tell you how I feel. I want to tell you, I feel so bad about my dirty house. And you're like, no, I know that, I know that. So let's get to cleaning. He's like, yes, we will get to it, but wait. please just listen. I want to tell you because I feel so bad about my dirty house. It's so dirty. Do you see it? Do you see it? It's so dirty. Look, do you smell that? Do you see how stinky that is? It's terrible. And I just can't believe I live in this dirty house. It's such a dirty house. And you're like, yeah, okay, let's get to cleaning it. I can help you. I'm here to help you clean it. Like, yeah, we will get there. But wait, let's just keep talking about how dirty my house is. And then you go home, you sleep, you come back the day after. You're like, okay, today we're going to clean. But the same thing happens again. He's like, yes, we're going to get to cleaning. But first, let's complain about how dirty the house is. So I tell him, your house is clean. Your house is beautiful. Your house is amazing. But imagine you go to your friend's house because you feel bad for him and you feel bad for how bad he feels. You go to his house every day for the next 6 months. And you spend 8 hours, 10 hours per day at your friend's house. Hi, baby. My dog just came back from the vet. So you spend I'm sorry, what was I saying? She really distracted me. Oh yeah, you spend like 8 hours, 10 hours per day in your friend's house, and his house is so dirty. Even though your house is clean, now you're spending all of your days in the dirt. Even if it's not your own dirt, you're still spending your entire day in the dirt. The house still has mold. It doesn't matter if it's not your own mold. If you breathe mold, that still will make you sick, whether it's your own mold or somebody else's mold, like that will still make you sick. So I was telling him, but you keep insisting, but your friend keeps on not wanting to get to cleaning. He just wants to cry, complain, sit in the dirt and smell the mold. And I told him, like, does that sound like a nice way to spend every day? And he was like, no, that doesn't. I was like, no, right? That sounds terrible. And also, can you imagine you're getting sick every day, even if it's not your own house? And he was like, yeah, that doesn't sound very smart at all. And I was like, right. It doesn't sound smart at all. And it's like, so you know what's a good hi, baby? My other dog just walked in. So can you imagine what would be a better way to go about it? It doesn't mean you don't have to talk to your friend ever again. It doesn't mean you have to insult him. It doesn't mean you have to go into a fight with him. But maybe instead of spending every day at his house, how about next time you tell him, hey, by the way, I love you. I'm here for you. And the door to my house is always open. So whenever you want to come to my house, my door is always open. And whenever you want cleaning advice, I'll have it. I'll even give you a little bit of a basket of some of my stuff that I use for cleaning my favorite sponges and stuff. But, I'm not going to spend every day in your house. And that works. I've tried it so many times. It's the weirdest thing, but I've had like difficulties with people, situations with people, because I have a Kier in my chart, and I can tell you I've gone through every single thing that Kier describes. It's not been pleasant, but I've been there. So I always wanted to help people. And I'll tell you the story that my what do you want? What are you going to do about it guy? Thank your parents for working on their stuff so you don't have to deal with your grandparents. Same guy, amazing guy. He told me another great thing. I was telling him, I was sitting there and I was crying. I was in so much distress because I was telling him, you know what? You are right. Like, I've been thinking about everything. I started working on myself a little bit, and I feel better, and I'm starting to solve some of my problems. And I was telling him, but now I have another big problem. And he was like, what is it? And I was like, my family, my friends, And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, now I figured it out. Now I'm trying to help them. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I just figured out we're all living horrible lives, and I want to help them because you helped me see that. Now I want them to see that too, So I was like, now everybody in my life has to see that too. And so now I'm trying to help them. And I told this person in my family, let's work on this. I'm going to help you. Let's do this. I'm going to help you. And you. And I told him, I was like, they don't want help. They're even getting angry at me for that. At some point, I was like, I'm moving, but my family's not moving and my friends are not moving. Nobody's moving. And I was feeling really bad about this, on it, like legitimately. I was being able to see so much more clearly. I went from not seeing it and being part of it to seeing it and not having fully worked on it, but being able to kind of see how much pain everybody's in, how bad our life really is, how terrible like the quality of our life really is. And Um, and then I wanted to change not just myself, but everybody around me. I wanted everybody to go and live this happily ever after story with me or whatever. And they really didn't want to. And then he told me, Sulvai, let me stop you right there. He was like, you're being so disrespectful. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm being disrespectful. I'm trying to help people. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not being disrespectful. He was like, yeah, you're being super disrespectful. And I was like, why disrespectful? And he was like, because everybody has the right, and it is their right to choose how they want to live their life. And it's disrespectful to get in the middle of that, and he was like, you can't disrespect a person who's trying their best to live a good life, but you also can't disrespect a person who doesn't want to work on themselves if they don't want to. You just can't. That's disrespectful. It's their choice. Even if they're killing themselves by living a horrible life, it's still not up to you, and it's not respectful to get involved. And I was like, no. I was like, no, I disagree. I was like, this is not right. You're wrong about this one. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna give you a horrible, horrible example. And he was like, forgive me already because it's disgusting. And I was like, okay. And I was like, and he was like, yeah, but this is what's happening to you. And I have to tell you, I have to open your eyes right now. And I was like, okay, tell me. And he was like, imagine your family, your friends, like all these people in your life and you, right? And he said, until recently, imagine all of you were worms, he said. And imagine all of you were living in this big piece of meat. And it's not just meat. The meat is rotten. The meat is moldy and it's stinky and it's gross and it's disgusting and it's horrible, disgusting meat. And he was like, but I want to remind you of something. Until a few months ago, you were just like all the other worms living in the meat. And he told me, not only that, you loved it. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, you were in there. And it is true. He told me, like, you were in there and you were like rubbing your face all over the mold. And you were like, oh, yeah, give me some of that disgusting rotten meat. I was like, you loved it. You enjoyed it. You didn't want to get out of it. If you wanted to, if you minded it, you would have done it this earlier, not now. And then one day he says, you were like, this is kind of weird. Why am I rubbing my entire body all over some rotten, meaty, moldy meat, and you were like, maybe this is not so healthy for me. Maybe I should do something about it. And then you came to me and you started doing something about it. That's great. But now you're standing in the meat, surrounded by the mold. You no longer want to rub your body all over the mold, but you look around and there are some of your family members, there's some of your friends, there's some of the people in your life, and they are all blah, rubbing their body in the meat, rolling on it, enjoying the mold. And they're also just like you, they love it, he said. They also love it. And I was like, okay. And so he was like, and there you are. And then now you're going to them and you're like, stop, stop. And you're pulling them out of the meat, he says, pulling them away and telling them, don't rub your body in the mold. That makes no sense. That's terrible. Stop rubbing your body in the mold. And they're like, leave me alone. I want to rub my body in the mold. And they're going back to the meat. And you're going to another one of them and pulling them away from the meat, he says. And you're like, no, guys, stop it. This is bad. I just realized mold is bad. The meat is bad. It's rotten. That's a bad thing. But they keep telling you nobody's, we love it. We love it. We love the mold. We want to keep rubbing our body in the meat. And so he says, you're just annoying everybody, to be honest with you, because they love it. They want to keep rubbing their body in the meat. But he says, I'm going to now tell you what's actually happening. Because he says, you think the problem is that all the worms in your life are still in the meat, rubbing their body in the meat. You think that's the problem. That's not the problem. You were there for how many decades, He's like, you're not one to judge that. You've been doing that for 20, 30, I don't know, for how many ever long years, So first of all, stop judging that, because it was only like 3 months ago that you were doing that exact same thing. So don't put yourself on such a high horse just yet. But secondly, he said, the problem is not them. The problem is not that they're rubbing their warm bodies in the meat. The problem is that you have notice that you don't want to be in the meat personally, that you don't want to rub your body on mold, that you don't want to roll on the rotten meat. But here you are still standing on the meat, not leaving the meat for a different reason now than you were before, but you're still sitting on the meat, standing on the mold, going and interacting with all the other moldy worms, you know? And he's like, when you already figured it out, you have the opportunity to walk away from the meat, but you're still there in the meat and the rottenness and the mold. And he said, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're using everybody else as an excuse to not leave the meat. I don't know, maybe. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I think you're right. And he was like, uh-huh. And he said, so here's how life works. It works like this, and it works like this, and this, and this. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, sometimes you notice you're in the meat, and maybe there came a worm before you who already left the meat, and he said, and you see it, you know, far away. He said one day you can be that worm that was stepped away from the meat, and maybe one of those friends, one of those family members, he said, will also be like, hey, one day, like, hey, I don't want to rub my body in the mold and the meat and the rotten stuff anymore. And then they're gonna look up, and guess what are they gonna see? They're gonna see you standing there far away from the meat. And they're going to be like, wait, she left that meat sometime years ago, right? And then they might think, oh, wow, she did that. That means I can do that too. And then he said, then they can come and then they can ask you for help. And then you still get to say no, by the way, he told me, like, just so you know that. But if you do want to help that person, then you can grab their arm and help give them a little push out of the meat. In the same way that right now I or other people in your life you're looking at us like this, and you're like, please hold my hand and get me out of here. And I'm grabbing your hand and I'm pulling you out. And one day you might pull somebody else out, but you can't teach people how to leave the meat or beg them to leave the meat while you're still in the meat. And then I had a therapist years later, and I was talking to her about how this is so sad for me, that I wish I could help these people, la la la, you know. And she was telling me, what are you talking about? You're helping these people way more than if you would have stayed there and kept doing the same things. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, don't you know? She's like, they might not be thinking about it consciously. They might not be aware of it, but just the fact that you went away from the bad patterns, that you changed, that you healed, that you worked on yourself, that you achieved all of the goals that you wanted to achieve, that you're working on yourself and having a good relationship, of, you know, having stability in your life, having health, having all of those things. She was like, that's way more powerful than staying there, participating in those patterns and telling people, you should change your pattern. You should change your pattern. You should work on yourself. She's like, that makes zero effect. You doing your life is so helpful to other people. She said, you can help way more people by doing that. And all of those people, if they want to change, having seen you as an example of how you did it is the perfect way to help them. And I was like, okay, now I get it. You know? So basically, Pierre has to learn to put people off of their own back because they're dear. They can't carry others. There's this beautiful Buddhist saying, which is, I can show you the door, but I cannot cross it for you. And there's things about helping people, and those things are, well, you cannot really help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. Trust me, I've tried. You can't. Second, you cannot help others if you have not helped yourself first. Trust me, I've also tried, also doesn't work. None of these things work. You can't, you just can't, you know, you can't be a fitness coach who's not fit. You don't just haven't figured it out. You know, you see nowadays all of those like financial advisors with no money, or fitness coaches who are not fit, or, you know, it just doesn't work. If you knew the secret to actually doing it, you probably would have done it already. You know what I mean? And so the idea is that the best thing you can do for yourself, but also for others, is to help yourself. Que teaches us to help ourselves. It teaches us that we can love others, that we can be super loving, still feel love and worry about others, but in a way that is healthy and that is more helpful both for our own health and for the health of others, like the meat example and all of that I just gave you. And also, Kiech is the one that teaches us boundaries. Kiech people really need to say the word no. For them, sometimes it's really hard to say no. Sometimes it's hard to say stop, but they really have to learn the meaning of healthy boundaries, of setting limits, of saying no, of saying stop, and of committing to the no. Because boundaries are not just saying no. Boundaries are saying no and meaning it and then following through with the no, by the way, which also a really hard one for me to learn at some point. But yeah, that's what Kiech teaches us. And so today is a good day to go heal yourselves. It's a good day to set boundaries. It's a good day to step away from the meat. And it's a good day to do the best thing you can do, which is to help yourself. And if you help yourself, so many amazing things will happen. I promise you. You will feel better. Your life will be better. And you know what? I wanted to help so many people all those years ago. And I always say this during the challenge. I actually many of their lives changed, but only because I changed my life. And also because I changed my life, now here I am, and I'm able to maybe even say something that might help you. So it had a way bigger impact to help myself than to say, oh, first I'll put others and then I'll help myself, you know? So go help yourselves. And today we're drinking cacao with cardamom, which cardamom is amazing. It has so many medicinal properties. First of all, it's antibacterial. It's also anti-inflammatory, which is so great because, as you know, we don't want to have inflammation in our body long term. It's not good. If you have inflammation, you have to figure out what to do about it, because if you have it for many years, it will make you ill. So you have to fight the inflammation. Cardamom can help you with that. Blood pressure, it can regulate your blood pressure, is really good to help your blood sugar levels stay regulated. And for that reason, is good for people with diabetes. It can protect your liver. It also is anti-nausea. Additionally to that, it helps with your digestion. It helps with heartburn. It helps with headaches. It helps if you're bloated, yeah. And additionally to that, it helps with the health of your teeth. And we already went over anything that makes your breath smell good in the Maya tradition, that helps your mouth health, is helpful so that your words can arrive better with the people you're having conversations with. And since maybe as a Kiech person today, you'll have to say no, at least you'll have good breath as you're saying no, and it'll be easier to do it. So that's the energy of the day. See you guys tomorrow. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye, everyone. See you guys. Bye.